If we asked 10 Australians what the most Australian beer is, we'd probably get 10 different answers.
And at least one argument.
So instead of picking our favourite beer, we're asking a harder question. What actually makes a beer Australian?
Is it how many people drink it?
Or how long the brewery's been around?
Or whether it was built for our climate and culture?
Today, Australia makes everything from mass market lagers to hazy IPAs and barrel-aged stouts.
So, what is the most Australian beer of all?
To answer that question, you've got to understand how beer even became Australian in the first place. Beer arrived to Australia with the first fleet in 1788, but early brewing was difficult. Hops didn't grow well in Australia, refrigeration didn't exist, and clean water was unreliable. As a result, early settlers drank rum or wine or imported beer when they could get it.
Local brewing began to take hold in the early 1800s, using substitutes like maize and sugar instead of malted barley. By the mid to late 19th century, improvements in malting, refrigeration, and rail transport allowed breweries to scale up.
This era gave rise to Australia's big lager breweries, shaping light, crisp beer styles that dominated Australia's drinking culture for well over a century.
In front of us are 8 recognisably Australian beers.
This isn't a craft beer ranking, this is not about hype.
These beers are being judged on one thing only: how Australian they actually are. Popularity, longevity, cultural impact. Stack those together, and by the end of this, one beer has to come out on top.
All right, cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Love it or hate it, but VB, or Victoria Bitter, is one of Australia's most iconic beers. First brewed in 1854, it's one of the oldest continuously brewed beers in Australia. It was born in Melbourne during the Gold Rush era when Australia was growing fast and thirsty and work demanded a reliable and affordable beer. A Scottish-born Thomas Aitken found himself in Victoria at 20 years old, and just 12 years later he went on to found Victoria Parade Brewery in Melbourne. Now, there's some debate about whether the naming of Victoria Bitter is named after its state of origin or in honour of the street upon which it was built. For more than 170 years, VB has grown to become a part of Australia's culture and its identity. It's recognisable.
Hard-earned thirst needs a big cold beer, and the best cold beer is Vic.
Typifies the beer's image as a beer for any Australian bloke who's proud of hard work and sweat on his brow. Masculinity and national identity, along with its close association with sports sponsorship, helped to make it one of Australia's most widely consumed beers. In fact, until 2012, it was Australia's most consumed beer before being briefly dethroned by a major rival. At its peak, VB was producing a carton of beer every second and reached a height of 25% of the market share in Australia. But even today, the beer is divisive. People either defend it fiercely or swear they'll never drink it. Despite being bitter by name, this is actually referring to the English beer style and not the flavour. It's a lager, brewed for Australia's climate, light-bodied and crisp, and designed to be drunk cold. 4.9% ABV, except in the late 2000s when it dropped to 4.8 and 4.6 following changes to Australia's tax laws. It returned to full strength in 2012. Now, you don't have to like VB, but you can't ignore it. A beer with this much history and cultural weight earns its place in any serious conversation about the most Australian beer. All right, let's give this one a taste, shall we?
Let's do it.
Jeez.
For a hard-earned thirst.
In a big cold beer.
Definitely pale and straw.
Give it a taste. It's light.
It's crisp. Tastes earthy to me.
Yeah, definitely get the malt.
Malty.
Yep.
It's been a while since I've had a VB.
Yeah, it's not as bad as I expected.
No.
I take it back. It'd be interesting to see what this tastes like on tap.
I can see why it's so popular, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cheers.
In a world where beer trends come and go, and new styles rise and vanish, Cooper's Pale Ale and its iconic green label stayed true for over 160 years. The story begins in 1862 when Thomas Cooper, who had emigrated from the UK, brewed his first batch using a family recipe he said had restorative qualities. For his wife, that humble personal creation could grow into Cooper's brewery we know today. Produced in South Australia by Cooper's, the last major Australian-owned brewery still standing. Pale Ale took a completely different path to the rest of the country. While almost every other beer chased mass market trends, Cooper's didn't budge. They stuck to natural fermentation, they kept the haze, they kept the sediment, they kept the roll the bottle ritual. Not because it looked cool, because that's what they believed good beer should be. And honestly, what's more Australian than refusing to change just because everyone else is? That unique process gives Coopers its flavour. Fruity, crisp, lightly citrusy, refreshing but with depth. At 4.5%, it's easy drinking yet full of character. For a lot of Australians, this was the first beer that tasted like something other than cold or wet. But the most Australian moment in the Cooper story came in 2005 when Lion Nathan tried to buy them out. Coopers didn't just say no, they rallied their shareholders, they pushed back, they rewrote parts of their constitution. And they shut the door so hard the takeover could never be attempted again.
Wow, that's impressive.
It wasn't just a business move, it was a statement. A classic bit of Australian stubborn independence. We're doing it our way, and if you don't like it, go and get Coopers stayed exactly what it had always been. Family owned, Australian owned, proudly brewing the same instantly recognisable pale ale. And with over 5% of the national beer market, which is huge for an independent brewer, Coopers has earned a fiercely loyal following. It feels deeply Australian, not because it clings to the past, but because it refuses to let anyone else decide its future. It's a beer defined by independence, authenticity and consistency. It survives because it refuses to be anything else. And that's what makes Coopers Pale Ale unmistakably, proudly Australian. And when you're talking about the most Australian beer, that kind of independence is hard to beat. All right, you ready for this bad boy?
Let's give it a go. Light.
Definitely hazy, you can't see through that. Definitely got some chunks in there,
Got some
mate.
chunks, you got chunks. Fruity, I think.
Yeah,
Fruity, zesty, it's got good carbonation.
it's that pale ale. It's definitely a different type of beer.
Yeah,
It's more crafty.
crafty before craft beer was a thing. It's good. Pick it up. If you haven't had a Cooper's or you haven't had one in a while, give it a splash.
How do you feel?
I feel like a Tooheys. If VB is Victoria's beer, then Tooheys New is pure New South Wales. For generations, ordering a new in New South Wales didn't need any explaining. It was just understood.
Schooner of new, thanks.
Sorry, mate. No dogs allowed.
That's a guide dog, mate.
Guide dog. Guide dogs are either German Shepherds or Labradors.
What are they giving me?
Give that man a new.
Tooheys was founded in 1869 when Irish brothers John and James Tooheys opened their first brewery in Sydney, right in the heart of Australia's colonial beer boom. Cities were growing fast and beer was a necessary part of daily life. While the Tooheys brothers began brewing old dark ales, which is still in production today, Tooheys New is a beer most people think of when they hear the name Tooheys. It arrived much later in 1945, launched just after World War II, forging itself in parallel to Australia's newly established identity. Culturally, Tooheys New became deeply tied to New South Wales. Like VB, it earned heavily by leaning into sport, especially rugby league, seen in their most famous ad campaign. Tooheys New was one of the most popular beers in the country, especially in New South Wales, where it certainly commands regional loyalty. While it's never quite reached VB's national dominance, it does remain in the top 10 beers sold in Australia every year. The beer itself is classic Australian lager, medium-bodied, mildly bitter, and designed to be drunk cold. At 4.6% ABV, it sits squarely in that full-strength category, and it may not have dominated nationally, but through longevity and regional loyalty and one of the most recognisable beer campaigns Australia's ever produced, Tooheys New earns a spot in the conversation about which beer is the most Australian beer. I feel like a Tooheys, or two. All right, let's give it a go. What do we call that, amber?
Yeah. Silly way to describe it. Feels wet. Straight up bitter on my palate.
It's very drinkable though.
It is. I mean, I could probably do a couple, but I'd probably move on to the next one. Tasmanians call it blue, just like Victorians order a VB and Queenslanders a 4X. And the reason's about as Australian as it gets. The label's blue. Cascade Lager comes out of the Cascade Brewery in Hobart, which is the oldest continuously operating brewery in Australia. Brewing's been happening on that site since 1832, which is pretty wild when you think about it. The whole thing started because someone noticed the fresh mountain water running off Mount Wellington and thought, yeah, that'll do for beer. It hasn't exactly been the smooth run. In 1967, a massive fire ripped through the brewery and pretty much wiped it out. Instead of calling it a day, they rebuilt, and that's where those famous old stone buildings come from. These days, it's easily the most photogenic brewery in the country. Cascade's also changed owners a few times over the years, especially as the beer industry got swallowed up by bigger and bigger companies. It's now owned by a multinational, Kirin, which sounds very un-Tasmanian on paper, but the beer's still brewed in Hobart and the place hasn't lost its local feel. To most Tasmanians, it's still their brewery, regardless of who owns the brand. Nationally, Cascade Lager doesn't go toe-to-toe with heavy hitters like VB or 4X. In fact, they don't even export it to the mainland. David had to rope in some Tassie friends to ship it up to us. Thanks to Roger and Sally from Launceston for hooking us up. But in Tasmania, it's huge. It's one of the state's top sellers and proper everyday beer. There's even a long-standing north-south rivalry. Bogues up north, Cascade down south, which says a lot about how seriously people take their local brews. At 4.8%, the Cascade is a crisp, clean, full-strength lager with gentle bitterness that is easy drinking with a refreshing finish. But at the end of the day, Cascade is more than just a lager. It's tied up in Tasmanian pride, local identity, and a bit of stubborn resilience. The brewery's a landmark, a tourist stop, and a reminder that some brands stick around no matter what gets thrown at them. Fires, buyouts, or 200 years of change. So while Cascade Lager might not fill fridges across the mainland, when it comes to history, character, and local loyalty, it's about as Australian as a beer gets. It's the beer we drink here.
Raise a glass. Not a bad drop. I have to go down there and check it out there in Tasmania.
Definitely.
I can feel a 4X coming on. Full disclosure for this next beer, Justin and I are both Queenslanders and we both live in Brisbane, which is the home of our next beer. So let's talk about 4X Gold. This is where Queensland really enters the chat. 4X Gold was first brewed in 1991, but the story goes way back to Brisbane's Castlemaine Perkins Brewery in 1878. For well over a century, that building's been part of Brisbane's skyline. The big neon 4X and Mr. 4X is an iconic piece of Brisbane. Even the name 4X has a bit of history. Back in the day, brewers marked barrels with X's to indicate quality, and 4X's meant top notch, which is what they aimed to serve their loyal customers. By population, Queensland is only Australia's third largest state, so 4X wasn't as wide selling as beers from down south. Until 2012, when it knocked long-standing champ VB off the top spot for the first time in nearly 30 years. That is a massive deal. Culturally, 4X Gold is tied to Queensland the same way VB is tied to Victoria. It's the beer you see at barbecues, on the beach, and on the jerseys of major sporting teams. They've never been shy about leaning into big, bold marketing. At one point, 4X even bought an island and called it 4X Island, a beer paradise for you and your mates. This kind of stunt is very on brand for Queensland and for Queensland beer. The beer itself is a deliberate beer, brewed lighter at 3.5% ABV as a light, crisp and sessionable mid-strength lager. Think about it, Queensland is reliably hot, so you want something refreshing that you can drink before it gets hot. And maybe another one, or two, without feeling knocked around. Some people criticise it for a lower alcohol, but that kind of misses the point. So when you add it all up, a historic brewery, deep cultural roots, bold, confident marketing, and a beer brewed intentionally and unapologetically for the climate and the drinkers, 4X Gold makes a really serious claim to being one of the most Australian beers. It's good as gold. Cheers. All right, here's one we're familiar with.
I've never had one.
I call bullshit. Malty, can definitely taste malt.
That's crisp.
Doesn't have a lot of bitterness. No bitterness, really. No. It's got similar lager characteristics to some of the other beers we've had. but it's definitely lighter. You can taste that
lighter,
it's
yeah.
one standard drink, so it's 3.5% as opposed to 4.8.
It's not punching you in the face.
For anyone who's watching from overseas and look at it and go, they're drinking a 3.5% lager, it's hot. Like it's 30 degrees plus today. Complex flavors and heavy beers demand to be drunk at a slower pace so you can enjoy and consume the flavor. You just can't get through it quick enough before it gets hot.
Yep.
But you can smash 4 of these and feel completely fine. You can't get drunk on 4X Gold. It's basically just hydration. That's probably not 100% true, but it's not far wrong. Anyway,
I love that we call it Milton Mangoes.
Milton Mangoes. Pluck off a tree.
Most Australians don't think of it as iconic, yet Carlton Dry quietly became the country's second highest selling beer. Launched in 2006, right as Australians were shifting towards lighter, cleaner, lower carb beers. People wanted something refreshing, easy and uncomplicated. Carlton Dry hit that trend perfectly with its 4.5% crisp, low bitterness flavour.
Be like the beer.
It did not win people over with tradition or attitude, it won by fitting into how Australians actually drink. Socially, casually, outdoors, and over long sessions where beer just works. It's the kind of beer that shows up at barbecues, footy games, house parties, road trips, and work events, without ever needing to be the centre of attention. What's interesting is that Carlton Dry doesn't really belong to one place, in the way traditional beers do. It's brewed by Carlton and United Breweries across multiple facilities around the country, from Victoria to Queensland and beyond. And maybe that's why it became the default choice. It was not polarising, it was not trying to be craft. And unlike the classic old school lagers, it did not lean on nostalgia or heritage. The clean blue and white branding helped as well. In a market full of reds, greens and golds, Carlton Dry looked modern and approachable. It looked like a beer made for the current generation, while still feeling familiar. Maybe the most Australian beer isn't the loudest, the oldest or the strongest. Maybe it's the one everyone can live with. Carlton Dry didn't ask to be anyone's favourite, it simply aimed to be there when you needed it. And that reliability is exactly what made it a defining part of Australia's everyday drinking culture.
I think it's because they used to use plough horses to deliver the beer.
Specifically Carlton?
No, just beer in general.
I thought so.
Interesting argument. I mean, the one that you can live with is the best, but
Slight stretch, but yeah.
you know,
As stated, second highest selling beer in Australia.
you can't discount that. That's true.
You can't, unfortunately.
If you drink Carlton Dry, drop us a comment in the comments because we'd like to know why you drink it.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong answer. This could be just that your family drinks it. Maybe it's the beer you grew up on. Maybe it's the first beer that you had. Maybe, like us, it's the local beer. Tell us, honestly, we'd love to know. Great Northern Super Crisp is a different kind of Australian beer story because it doesn't start with history, it starts with intent. This beer launched in 2010, which makes it one of the youngest beers in this lineup. No gold rushes, no colonial founders, no century-old brewing buildings. Instead, it was designed from the ground up to answer one question. What do Australians actually want to drink right now? It's called Great Northern Super Crisp. It's pitched as the beer from up here, meaning Queensland, promising a taste that is as refreshing and as pure as the natural landscapes of the top end. Despite being a relatively new beer, Great Northern Super Crisp is Australia's best-selling beer and has been for 5 years. That alone puts it in rare company. It defies the trend of a regional beer and it sells everywhere, which suggests a beer perfectly designed for how Australians drink today. Great Northern represents a shift. It's less about identity through tradition and more about identity through activity. Camping, fishing, sports, social barbecues. It's as much as home of these events as it is the established players. What is equally impressive is Great Northern's ability to get up and run. It only took 11 years for it to crack the top step in the sales, and a large part of that is put down to a really aggressive marketing strategy. Like it or hate it, you'll see the Great Northern branding on pubs from Brisbane to Ballarat, and the company aggressively sponsored pubs nationwide to gain a foothold. And it worked. The beer itself is a 3.5% ABV mid-strength lager, light, clean and extremely sessionable. There's no bitterness to wrestle with, no malt weight to slow you down. It's built for the heat and for long afternoons. It might not have the history yet, but when it comes to popularity and relevance, and a beer designed squarely for Australians and how they drink today, Great Northern Super Crisp makes a modern and very hard to ignore case about being one of Australia's greatest beers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Currently Australia's highest selling beer. While you're drinking it, it's very clean, very refreshing. No carbonation.
Very low carb, very low bitter,
Very low bitter.
low bitterness.
I get up with the Great Northern Super Crisp. There's like a plastic aftertaste for me. You know that lingering mouth taste?
Yeah, there is actually, you are right.
Great Northern Brewing Co. The beer from up here.
I bought the marketing until I realised it was brewed almost on the New South Wales border.
It is north of everyone else, just not north of you.
Triggers me a little bit. So if you're a Great Northern drinker, and most of Australians are, tell me why. Tell me what your thoughts are on the brand. Maybe you haven't thought that much about it. Maybe it's just the beer that you drink, but tell us why. I'd be really interested to know.
150 Lashes changed the way Australians think about beer. Despite not being the oldest or the most popular beer, it definitely arrived and capitalised on a time when drinkers were starting to look beyond the usual lagers. In many ways, it became the beer that encouraged people to try something new. Brewed by Malt Shovel, the craft arm behind James Squire, 150 Lashes made craft beer feel approachable. It was lighter than a pale ale, softer than an IPA, and familiar enough for people used to the classics. At 4.2%, bright, citrusy and gently bitter, it became the beer you reached for when you wanted something a bit more interesting without going too far. Its name comes with a story. The legend goes that James Squire, Australia's first brewer, was sentenced to 300 lashes for stealing ingredients like horehound and pepper to make beer. The punishment was split into 2 rounds of 150, and when he presented 2 barrels of his brew to the governor, the sentence was reduced. The story lives on every time someone cracks open a 150 Lashes. Culturally, its impact came from being a gateway. For many Australians, this was the first beer that tasted noticeably different. The first one that made them think, hang on, I actually like this. When craft beer was moving from niche to mainstream, 150 Lashes made the new feel familiar. What 150 Lashes gave Australians was a helping hand to open the door for the craft beer explosion that followed. Look, as I said, it's a gateway beer. It kind of took over from when everyone was sick of the lagers. They wanted something a bit different. James Squires came out with the 150 Lashes. Kind of got everyone on the craft train. And I really think that's why it should be considered one of the most Australian beers. All right, 150, let's do it.
It's a bit opaque.
It is. Well, it's more fruity and florally.
Ooh, that's a different beer to what we've been drinking all day.
It is.
A lot of people drink it happily, and it's so different to the rest of them.
It is easy drinking. It has a nice flavour profile.
Aussies love beer. To us, it's more than a tasty beverage. For some, it's a symbol of home, our passion, our way of life. It's woven into our culture, our heroes, and our identity.
The Australian poet Henry Lawson said, "Beer makes you feel the way you ought to feel without beer."
And looking into 8 beers, it's pretty clear there's no single way to define what makes a beer truly Australian. Some of these beers carry enormous history,
Some dominated sales for decades.
and some are deeply tied to the place or to the sport or to particular versions of Australian life that we identify with.
And some just understand how Australians drink today.
This was never about picking our favourite beer. It was about weighing factors like popularity, longevity, cultural impact, and brewers' intent.
And for us, one beer edged ahead. Not because it's perfect, and not because everyone loves it, but because over time, it's done more of those things more consistently than the rest.
For me, the winner's got to be Coopers, because it's the Australian beer. It's Australian made, it's Australian owned, it refuses to bow to the competition, it refuses to be bought out, it refuses to bow to the trends that everybody else is pulling together. It stays the same. It knows what it's about and it delivers it. I think Coopers is Australia's most Australian beer.
Mate, I agree. I've gone Coopers as well. As you said, 100% Australian owned. It didn't want to change itself. It's 160 years old. They started with this before craft beer even became a thing. This is what they came up with. This was the perfect beer. And still, we drink it today. A lot of Australians drink it today.
It's not the most drunk beer in Australia. It's probably not the most famous beer in Australia, but when you weigh up the history, the cultural impact, the story, and it's a good tasting beer, one that defies the trends and one decides to forge its own path, it's pretty Australian. So we didn't compare notes. We came to this conclusion in this segment, and I'm not surprised that we came to the same reckoning. Some great beers in here, some average sort of beers in my opinion, but there you have it. For us, Cooper's Pale Ale is the most Australian beer.
And you might disagree, and that's kind of the point.
Let us know in the comments which beer you think should have won and why.
We hope you've enjoyed our journey through Australian beer.
We certainly have.
Don't settle for boring beers.
Thanks for watching.